After law school, you become an associate in the pharmaceutical defense department of a Chicago law firm, and you guys would basically tear these doctors apart who were lying. What's an instance for you that stands out the most from that?
When I was in law school, there was a catharsis that took place, because I remember I came out of the law library, it was spring for the first time. I smelled grass, fresh cut grass. I got sick. It just hit me. I literally got sick, and they said, "What is wrong with you?" And it was that grass. It was like the baseball field. It just hit me that you're here now and you're not there.
Why all these years later does it still make you a little emotional?
Because your definition to the game, grass was always the place that I wanted to get to. I walk in ballparks today, and there's no question that I look at that field and it's empty, and you see the grass and how pristine it is. You realize the privilege of the major leagues. You realize what it means. And for me, that grass means that you're at the place you want to be. It's your personal heaven, if you will. And when when that instance happened, it started thinking about, you just got to move on. You got to get to something that's entertaining for you. And so having a medical background and a legal background was very, very valuable to law firms. All of a sudden I realized that, wow, this is a bit of a commodity, that you have these two, and I had a lot of law firms pursuing me, and I went to the interviews. All they wanted to talk about was baseball. I'm going like, what? They just wanted to know about my life as a baseball player and how you pursued this career in law, and I was taken aback. I kept saying, I said, when are they going to leave me alone to let that go away? You want to be polite, you want to be kind about it. You just didn't want to talk about it.
So fast forward a bit, you're an associate in the pharmaceutical defense department of a Chicago law firm.
Economically, I couldn't believe how much money they were paying me, because I'd never really had that much. And I thought it would be like, oh, okay, this is what it's about. But the one thing that always bothered me was that the draft in baseball, it stayed the same. The game was appreciating in all forms, but they just unilaterally instituted this draft in 1965. And Rick Monday, who was a great major leaguer, was the first player chosen, and he got $100,000 to sign, and that was in '65. And here we were in the 80s, and the players are still getting the same bonus. It'd been like 17 years. So I went to my law firm and I said, look, I want to do my pro bono work. I want to do it helping these players. So I chose two players. One was Tim Belcher, who went to the baseball factory of Mount Vernon Nazarene College in Ohio. But he had a beautiful arm. And then I met Kurt Stillwell, who was one of the most finished high school players still to this day I've ever seen. Kurt signed for maybe 100 and, maybe nearly double what they normally offer. And Belcher, I looked into the contracts and I found that there was a January draft, and I found a loophole in there that if you took 10 units in college, you could be eligible for the season, but it would also allow you to be eligible for the January draft, and no one in pro baseball knew this. So I said, you don't have to take this $100,000. And they're going to go, well, you're going to go back for your senior year, you're going to get a lot less. I said, no, we have another vehicle here, the January draft. And so the Yankees drafted him in the first with the January draft, and then paid him, way more than the $100,000. So through our legal and baseball knowledge, we were able to craft a very positive outcome for Belch in that regard, and we're able to then show baseball that there is representation for draft picks.
And the rest is kind of history, but in what way did that malpractice settlement give you kind of the means early on to
the money I made as a lawyer allowed me to step into this and lose money for a decade, because that's basically how it was, because you had to wait for your players to get to the big leagues. It was so rewarding to represent individuals, players in the game you love versus brick and mortar and big pharma or other things that it was just, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with the game you love. I never wanted to have any reason to represent a player other than their interests, being a fiduciary. I wanted to make sure that I don't really need their money for me to survive. And that was a very, very helpful part of my career, because you had to take steps that people confronted you. Representation, when I first started, was not welcome. The owners were very upset about the draft.
What sorts of comments would be directed your
I
way?
had many situations where an individual would call me and say, look, I know you're a lawyer and you're a former player, there aren't many of them, but you really ought to come to work for us. And I said, I appreciate that, but I really think I can benefit the game and the balance of the game by representing the players. And they go, well, you make that decision and you work against us, and you know what's going to happen, because you're going to be thought of negatively in this game. And then it hit. One of my mentors, Don Woollett, he goes, 95% of what people say about you is going to be negative, because the clients you represent are going to be treated properly. And so when those threats came, I'm going, boy, Professor Woollett was so correct, in what he said, because the idea of it was the balance of the game was to bring the true value of these players to the teams. They viewed it as upheaval, as something really bad. And they kept associating this with my need for money. I'm going like, well, what are you talking about? I could go make 10 times the amount of money that you could ever make in this business doing something else. But that's kind of what they associated with. But for me, it was about bringing an element to the game, a truth to the game. The next draft and the next draft and the next draft, the bonuses went from 100,000 to 200 to 500, and then with Ben McDonald, we got the first $1 million signing bonus, and on the way up to 8 million and 10 million and even 20, because it just showed that we were correct in the fact that a select few draft picks were truly worth what they were worth to teams.